Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to 2020 You Won't Hold Me Back, the Q&A. We're here today to find out more about a project that I personally think is incredibly exciting, and I think you'll find that the people we have with us have also found it incredibly exciting. It's a project that's been pioneered by Into Opera and funded by Anguish's Educational Foundation. And it's been taking place in Norwich since July 2020. There have been 6 primary schools deeply involved in this, and they've developed what is going to be seen, I'm sure, as a major artistic response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I really want to start off by just thanking everybody who is watching this, whether you're watching it all together or whether you're watching it next year or in 10 years' time, because I think this is going to be something people are going to be interested in for a long time. Thank you for your interest and thank you for watching it. Okay, what I'd like to do now is just introduce our panel. So as I mention your name, could you please wave so that everybody knows who you are? So Will, could you wave at us, please? Hi, Will. Will is the composer of the song cycle. And if I move to Adisa, if you could wave at us. Hi, Adisa. Adisa, the Verbalizer, to give you your full professional title, is a performance poet and co-curator of the lyrics for the song cycle. Helen, could you wave? Hi, Helen. Helen is head teacher of St. Michael's VA Junior School, which has been one of the schools participating in the project. And Claire, could you give us a wave? Hi, Claire. Claire is deputy head at St. Francis Catholic Primary School, which is one of the other schools participating in the project. And then Genevieve, if you could give us a wave, thank you. Genevieve is artistic director and CEO of Into Opera, co-curator of the lyrics for the song cycle, and she's directed the project as a whole. And just very briefly, myself, I'm David, I'm chief exec of Norwich Charitable Trusts, and one of the 3 grant-making charities that comes under our umbrella is Anguish's Educational Foundation, who funded this project. Okay, I'm going to leap in now you've met everybody and find out, I was going to say a little, but I think we'll find out quite a lot more about this project, about the story of the project, about people's experiences of going through it. So I'm going to start with Genevieve. So Genevieve, how on earth did this begin? Where did the germ of this idea spring from?
Well, I should say that even going back to kind of June, the idea for this hadn't formulated yet. It very much has been an emergency response project to the pandemic, and something developed incredibly quickly. Over the lockdown, over those months in March, April, May, I found I was sitting watching a lot of news, a lot of TV, being in lockdown, and I just kept feeling like I wasn't seeing very much of children on the news. I wasn't hearing much from them. I was seeing a lot of adults, a lot of politicians, but I wasn't hearing very much from children at all, which just really got me thinking, what is it like for them at the moment? I run Into Opera, I run a charity which does a lot of professional work, but also a huge remit of our work is in education and with young people. And so I decided to get on the phone, basically, to a lot of children we'd worked with before, their parents, schools, teachers, and just to ask questions, really, and to listen, to try and find out what lockdown had been like for them. And for these children whose lives had really just been turned upside down, schools suddenly closing, what had that done to their lifestyles? And it was fascinating, David. It really was, just hearing how, hearing children in their own words talk to me about just not having that reason to get up in the morning, and no routine, no project to be involved with, no kind of sense of belonging to something, and also just not really seeing very much of their peers and their teachers, because obviously some schools have struggled to have kind of virtual contact. Some have bit, some have really struggled to do any. And of course, some families don't have much kind of technology at home as well. And so that's maybe restricted how much access the children have been able to have to those opportunities with their schools. So the children told me about that, and teachers I spoke to, gosh, it was incredibly moving, were telling me about just how anxious they were about how children's voices were being lost over this time. I remember having a really powerful conversation with your deputy, Helen, who really said to me, how how nervous she was about what the possible long-term mental health implications could be for the children, how traumatic that could be, and wondering what lay ahead in September, really, for when hopefully the children would come back. And so basically I had kind of got all this kind of evidence, I suppose, and just through listening and asking questions, and it just seemed to me that a project was needed. I tried to identify that need and went away and developed a project which I hoped would crucially give children a space for their story to be told, a space for their voices to be heard, and for a narrative around what it was like to be a child in 2020 to be shared publicly. And there came the idea for the song cycle, where we would develop a collection of songs, in this case 6 songs, which would help to chart the story of what it was like to be a child in 2020. So that's where it began.
Did you, Genevieve, did you get a sense that the children were bursting to tell the stories, or a sense that they didn't think that their stories were worth anything, or anywhere in between those two things?
Well, when we got the project started.
Yes, yeah, but also in those initial conversations when you were talking to them.
Oh, goodness! When I rang one little girl and her family up, I think it was a 2.5-hour phone call, because she had someone who wanted to listen.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, and she then told me about all the things she wanted to do, but all the things she was reading, and the other things she'd been trying to do to try and fill her time, which was really truly in itself inspirational, I would say. But absolutely, there was an energy I could see palpably, that was wanted to get out. And when we started running the project, I'm sure something we'll talk about is some of the virtual workshops that we held. It was so interesting because there was this balance of some children that obviously had been quite disconnected for some time with their peers and school, and you had to really break through a kind of a barrier to start with, to actually give them that safe space to talk. I'm thinking about one workshop where we had a young girl who was really, really worked up about doing a workshop on Zoom and didn't even want to come to the screen. I'm sure Adisa can remember what I'm talking about. And we managed to convince her that if she just listened in, that was something, but to join us when she wanted to. And then 5 minutes in, we got a little finger appeared as part of this kind of physical game we were playing. Then 5 minutes later, we got a forehead, and we could just see the forehead. So we all had a round of applause. The forehead had joined us. Then we got some eyes. Then we got the face. And by the end of the session, she had written a poem and put her hand up and wanted to share it with everyone, read it out. It was very personal. It was beautiful. And I'm sure you can imagine just how overwhelmed her teachers were, let alone us as facilitators. So it's been a real privilege and really quite incredible to be part of.
So what's it been like from a child's point of view? What sort of opportunities have they had to get involved in telling their story of lockdown or their feelings about it?
Well, it was really important, I think, from the off, to make sure that we had like a blended learning approach, so that there was a balance of like worksheets and activity packs, as well as a way to kind of get involved through virtual workshops and have that human contact too. So some education resources were developed for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 around kind of key themes that we felt might be kind of good to hook those activities on. So my emotional roller coaster of lockdown, or how you feel about your school, or the little things that have kept you smiling during lockdown. And for all of those, we set some activities, whether it was poetry writing, letter writing, or art activities, crafts activities, so that whether you were at home or whether you were at school as a key worker pupil, you could engage with them in some way, shape or form. So those resources went out to all the children. So you would have had those activity packs, and then you were told, please, please, please submit these to your school and to Interopera, so that we can see your work, because we really, really need to hear your story, because we need to tell your story through song, and we need to know what it was like to be you. It's not for us to tell as adults, it's their story. And we also then ran these virtual workshops. I think in total there were 24 one-hour workshops that Adisa and I ran together with our 6 schools, where we kind of lifted activities out of those resource packs and made them a bit more tangible, a bit more fun, and got children talking that way. So you could have turned up to a Zoom session as well. That was in July. And then over August, that was a big time for us to curate all of their work. And we had thousands, about 10,000 odd pieces of work that was submitted from the children. And we went through every single piece painstakingly. I'm looking at Adisa and Will here. And yeah, it was great going through all of that work and being able to kind of from that curate the lyrics for the songs. So back in school, September, October, children had access to then a plethora of resources that we created, a specific education resource page that they could access, which had all sorts of things like professional backing tracks that Will and his colleagues, musicians, and wonderful singer Lizzie Holmes went and recorded COVID safely in September and produced some tracks for the children to sing along to. We had videos from Will where he was introducing all of the songs. Adisa and I made videos about how we curated the words. So there were all sorts of material, all sorts of resources. And then the children were able to learn those songs. And more recently, they have been recording those songs. And I've been hearing all sorts of stories about head teachers' offices being turned into mini recording booths and things like that over recent weeks, where the children have gone through quite a major recording process in their schools. So they've got to do that and actually record. And then I say finally that what they've been doing over the last few days is our videographer, Guy Turner, has been going into schools and filming. So filming to try and make sure we really capture what schools are like at the moment and how they've had to adjust and adapt to the new COVID regulations and what that, tangibly looks like. So Guy's gone in and filmed that and also captured all sorts of fun things with the children, I gather, as well. So they've been part of that experience too. And now I guess they're waiting to see this film.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Adisa, can I turn to you?
No. Yes, you can.
Tell us, how did you get involved in this? And then tell us about what you did and the workshops that you ran. And this is particularly, I guess, sensitive material because it's not just about everyone being jolly and happy. It's about some personal upset, potentially some personal tragedy mixed in with. So how did you get involved? And then how did you structure and how did you deal with those workshops?
Yeah, well, at the beginning, getting involved, the wonderful Genevieve contacted me. I was washing up and I got an email whilst I was washing up, literally saying, "Hi, I'm Genevieve. I'm from this wonderful organization. Need a poet." And I was like, wow, I haven't done that kind of work before. I normally just go into schools and do my performance and do a couple of workshops and leave. But this is a challenge to create an opera, create music and out of the words. And I thought, wow, that's a challenge. So I responded and said I'd love to do it. And the conversation started. And for me, doing the work online was a challenge because, I'm so used to doing it all live. And now I was in front of this camera and projected into their world. And that was a challenge for me. But what was interesting for me was that I normally, when I go into a school, I'm trying to convince or remind young people that they have stories inside of them. You just have stories to tell. But we didn't have to do that this time. They knew they came pre-prepared, pre-packaged. They came full of the story. They knew they've got so much to say. And that was beautiful. And we just, the resource pack allowed them to just unravel and just tell those stories in a safe and a controlled way. And that was really beautiful. And I felt honored to listen to their stories, to be part of their unraveling, revealing what happened in their world. And as Genevieve was saying, we'd heard so much about COVID from an adult perspective, but now we were getting the young people's honesty. And one of the things I love about young people is they just tell the truth. They say it as it is. If they don't like my poetry, they just say, "That's boring, sir." They just say it. And whereas this is a chance to be truthful and honest. And it was very, very moving. The whole experience was very moving.
Yeah. Wow. So one of the most significant things about this project, and I think it's one of the significant reasons that Anguish has funded it, is this is the opposite of a group of professionals standing outside of a situation and writing something for children and young people to perform. the key thing for this was this material has been created by the children. And yes, you've shaped it and you've made it presentable, and but that's the wrong word, but you've made it into something that they can then present and be proud of. But the source material is them. So let's start with the lyrics. So that's Genevieve and Adisa, if I've got that right, who have co-curated, what have you co-done with all that material? Tell us about that and how you've co-done that.
Do you want to start, Genevieve?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, it was a mammoth task, I would say. We painstakingly really went through every single piece of work, and both Adisa and I did that separately. And we would go through all of the work. Did we do it by song or by school? I can't remember. Can you?
By school. By school.
Did it by school. That was it.
Yeah.
The first round we went through it by school,
Yeah.
and we would just set ourselves like a certain amount of work, and then we'd come back and talk about it. We'd both be making notes as we went along, then we would share those notes. Often we would then bring Will in as well, and we'd have little meetings with Will to share what our thoughts were and what we were learning. And I suppose that's what it was. We were learning, really, and coming together to discuss what we were learning about these children. And some things kind of really surprised us. I mean, I would say there was a real fierceness and energy that we saw in the work that we received from the children, which I don't think we necessarily expected to see at first. And but also a strength and bravery in terms of moving forward and what 2021 would hold, and being just adamant that 2020 would not hold them back, and actually that line, which is the line we've now taken for both the final song but also the title of the song cycle as a whole, came from a child, Lila from St Michael's, and that's an example of just a line that just blew us away, really, that we saw. And it was a line that she'd put in a picture of a rainbow, and it was really small. It's the kind of thing, if you were just glancing through the work really quickly, you probably wouldn't have seen. But we looked at everything in so much detail to try and make sure we didn't miss a thing, because I think the children deserved that, really. Adise, what would you add about the process?
Yeah, what was interesting is as it was going through the material, seeing reoccurring themes, reoccurring themes about how serious they took the virus, and how we didn't realize how much they really thought about the danger of the virus and the impact it was having on our lives. And just the recurring themes of how they were going to fight it, and the strength, the solidarity to get through it. That was really interesting, just putting those themes together and building the song cycle. Yeah.
Wow, what a process. And you said 10,000 items or thereabouts.
Just over.
It felt like 20,000.
I can imagine the amount of focus that you must have had to marshal to look at all of that and be open to what would come from it is phenomenal. I just want to say well done, because I think that is one hell of a task to do that. Fantastic. Thank you. Will, can I turn to you? This, I think, am I right? This was your first collaboration with Into Opera?
Indeed, yes. So I've never met Genevieve before. I think the connection possibly came via Michael Rosen, because I've done quite a lot of music with Michael, writing for children. And I think that was a sort of recommendation that flowed through.
Just in case anyone watching this doesn't know who Michael Rosen is, can you just...
Sorry, I think of him as a very well-known poet, and particularly works a lot with young people, and has written some wonderful youth poetry throughout his career. So it was my first time working with Into Opera, but not my first time working in sort of sculpting ideas together for this kind of age group.
Yeah. And tell us about the process. So I kind of want a picture in my head of what you did. What was the first thing that you had to do with that material?
Well, Genevieve and Adisa were just talking about it. So they were looking through all this material and what was emerging for each song, because they had made some decisions about basically what the 6 songs would be about. Yeah. And this was based on material that had emerged. So very roughly within these 6, under these 6 headings, there were words emerging, and these were being taken as individual lines that a child might have written, or a couplet, or perhaps something that had been mentioned quite a few times would be sort of put in once because it had been mentioned quite a few times. And these were quite big documents. I think we were saying they should be no more than 4 sides of A4, but we were also conscious that, you know, that's far more words than you ever have in a song. I mean, that's a huge amount of words. And that was bringing it down from where it was. But the idea was to sort of focus it so we had strong lines, or lines that somehow hung together. And Adisa worked magic on that in terms of perhaps bringing 2 lines that had been written independently and sort of drawing them into a couplet or a group of similar things. And we also, I said to Adisa quite early, I said, if you've got an idea about how you think these words might go rhythmically, because I know I've seen Adisa's work and his wonderful performance poetry, I said, please tell me about them. And in fact, what he did was he recorded each group of all of the words that they'd curated as a performance, which was really helpful for lots of reasons. It helped me understand, because he'd been in direct contact with the children in the workshops, there was this kind of through line of him performing their words to me in a sort of shape. So, I mean, like all writing for me, I have to start with a pretty blank head, just try and see if something will leap out. And in each case that happens. So the first song is called Thief. And the themes that they'd drawn upon were this idea of COVID coming and sort of stealing from you, a sort of nightmare scenario, a monster creeping up on you, something that wasn't there before, suddenly taking everything over. And it led me to feel that this should actually be a sort of spoken stroke shouted opening song. So in fact, there's no sung music in there. It's all percussive, rhythmic performance in that, and with these kind of short, sharp words. And what I would do is I would come up with a bit of an idea, and then I'd hand a fragment to Adisa and Genevieve, you know, perhaps just a few lines that I'd sung or performed on the studio, and they would sort of give me feedback. And in that way, across the 6 songs, we gradually devised, if you like, worlds and musical worlds for each song, because clearly you want 6 songs to not be the same. And there's a real progression in their work that comes.
Can you take us through that? So you
Sure,
talked about
yeah.
the first song.
So there's the first number is Thief, and it's sort of a very percussive song. The second one is now called My Emotional Roller Coaster. And it deals with a sort of perhaps a second phase after the shock of COVID arriving. It's kind of, we're off school. We have very mixed emotions. On the one hand, isn't it fun to be off school? But on the other hand, isn't it boring? I'm not seeing my friends. And so the whole song sort of vacillates between different feelings. I've tried to sort of give different emotions. There's fear, there's boredom, there's anger, there's joy, and these different things happen in the song. And of course, it was wonderful with that song, knowing, as with the whole thing, that the words you're setting to music are actual words that young people have thought. It's really very inspiring and gives you a lot of sort of, it makes those lyrics very strong for you. The third song, again, perhaps if you imagine going forward in the COVID story a little bit, focuses on the NHS Thursday night applause idea, and the song actually starts with some fantastic sort of saucepan banging and cheering, a bit like we all did in our streets, and saw Neighbours. And it's called Heroes, that song, and it does of course celebrate the NHS, but more personally, it celebrates people in the children's lives who are their heroes, who will of course be people who are closer to home. They'll be a dad, a mum, a brother, an uncle, a carer. These people in their lives who become heroes because they keep things going. And it's really nice that it sort of funnels down, if you like, from that big concept of a hero, a frontline worker who might feel a rather distant character if you haven't got someone in your home who's performing that role. But it then brings it down to them, who's my hero in my life. The fourth song is called The Little Things. And I think one of the things that Adisa and Genevieve asked the children to think about was, what have you noticed since lockdown happened? Because of course all these structures that you're used to, your school, your friendships, all of these things of course have been disturbed. And it's a really lovely lyric about little things that they've noticed that are fun or moving or remind them of something. Very personal little statements, about things that they've noticed. The fifth song is called Dear School, and it takes the form sort of a letter that they're writing to their school. Again, a wonderful range of ideas of different things that they might feel about school. And it's quite a longing kind of a song, I felt it needed to be, because what seemed to come through under this concept was the fact that school really is a very nurturing place. And for all of those young people, their normality would be to be very immersed in school. I mean, I have children myself here, and they similarly, not quite this age group because they're a bit older, but everything stopped, and all of those things that they're used to aren't there. And I've tried to, in the music of that song, really capture the longing that they seem to have for, like, can we get back to normal? I can't wait to get back to school where it's there waiting for me to sort of cradle me. And that was really moving to work on that material. Finally, 2020, You Won't Hold Me Back, is this big sort of gospel-y, upbeat song. Interesting to think that we were thinking about writing this song in August, when the future felt, the future's uncertain still, of course, but it seemed particularly uncertain. And I know, I'm sure Helen and Claire will remind us that for people trying to open schools, there was so much uncertainty. There was like nobody knew whether schools could open, whether they should open, all of these things. And so whilst it seemed like a great idea to write a song called 2020, You Won't Hold Me Back, there's part of me was thinking, wow, God, do I really even sort of think that? Because things are difficult. But these words that they've written are just bursting with energy and enthusiasm. And it is that amazing, perhaps a younger person thing of being resilient. And it really, talking about things that have come out of it, it's not the adult perspective, it's the child perspective. And it's actually very inspiring. So I, in the end, got very inspired. And I think we've got quite a strong number to close out with, which I've certainly enjoyed hearing the children sing.
That's fantastic. That's a really interesting insight into your process. Thank you. Can I turn now to Claire and Helen? So this lot that we've just heard from, what they've been aiming to do was give these children the chance to express their feelings, to empower them, to give them their voices. Have they done it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. Like Genevieve said, it's really important that we hear what the children have to say. You hear the politicians, you hear the adults speak, but you have to know the lived day-to-day experiences of the children. And this is such a great vehicle to do it. It's been amazing to hear their lockdown stories and for them to share those with their teachers and their friends too. I'm sure Claire's found the same thing in her school.
Of course, and they've all had such different lockdown stories, because in our school we had a significant number of children who were key workers children. So they were coming into school every day in different bubbles, but maybe without their best friends, with different children, only 10 in a class, thinking, I really resent this. My friends are at home and I'm here every day. And there are other children who we didn't see till nearly mid-September because they were self-isolating, and we hadn't seen since March, who hadn't seen anybody and thought they were all alone, and they didn't recognise that other children were having the same experience. When they suddenly heard the words of their friends, their peers, other people in the school, other people in other schools, having the same experience as them. Oh yes, we were banging our silks too, and you were as well. And oh yes, I was at home alone, and oh you were as well. And oh, I had to come to school, and wasn't it awful like this? And oh gosh, we've missed school so much. Knowing that they had the same experience as other people and they weren't alone in it was really, really important to them.
Yeah.
And they were all going through similar mixed emotions of missing school or wishing they were at home or life's unfair, or it made it normal. It normalized it for them. It made them feel less alone.
Yes. Helen, what about the children at your school? What's their reaction been to the project, to the process, and as Claire is saying, to hearing this coming back, hearing their stories made into something and coming back to them?
Well, I just think there was an enormous excitement and enthusiasm and just a real joy about being able to see their stories being put into song, to connect with Will as well and Adisa. That was just, you know, to have these professionals who were actually interested in what they had to say and then shape them into something that when they came back they could sing, they could learn to sing. I mean, one of the most important things is in coming back is about those relationships and forming those and reconnecting with people. So like Claire said, they were able to reconnect on a number of levels if they hadn't been able to see their friends. We were in a fortunate position. We were able to bring all our children back before the summer holiday if they wanted to. So that was a great time for them to start thinking about reconnecting, but it was all the way through the process. There was such positive feedback. They were really enjoying all the sessions, all the workshops, great excitement at seeing Will as well when they connected with you not so long back. Just really excited about doing it and really having that positivity, that creativity, being able to just showcase their own talent as well. Really good feedback from the children and their parents.
Fantastic. So when you were approached about this, when you heard about this project, both of you, if we go to Claire first and then back to Helen, it was, I suspect, quite a busy time, quite an uncertain time, quite a time when you had a fair amount on your plate in your roles in schools. So why on earth did you sign up to it? What persuaded you to think, okay, I'll take this on as well? What made that difference?
Well, they were crazy times, thinking, do we have enough staff today? Genevieve was involved with us because we'd applied to be with the Creative Approach curriculum. So when she said, there's a project, we're not hearing children's voices, it made me think, gosh, we're not hearing children's voices. We have got to hear these children's voices. We've got to hear what it's like for them. And a few staff going, oh, really? Really? We're going to do this? You are asking us to do this now? But then when Genevieve gave us the worksheets, which were really well thought out, and the children had the opportunity to write down their feelings about their emotional roller coaster or a letter to their school about their feelings, I was so certain it was the right thing we'd done, no matter what workload this might put on everybody, because it allowed the children to say how they feel. And if they were doing it at home, the parental feedback was, oh my gosh, the children can now talk to us about this. We didn't realize they were missing school so much, or they loved this about school, or they didn't realize that we had this fear about corona, or that they were making a metaphor of it like a wolf, because that's how they were imagining it. And with the amazing resources that Genevieve gave us, and then I knew that she was going to give us music and curate these into words. I knew that they would get so much from it. I didn't know quite how much they'd get from it. I didn't know that they'd be, even today, playing a game called Wolf Monster that's become a little bit like, you know, like Ring a Roses from the plague. A place called Thief, Wolf, Monster, which is about corona. They've developed around the songs they love.
Wow.
Which has helped them adapt to it. A few staff were a little bit reserved that actually coming back in September and then learning all these songs and singing all these songs would not help them, and the children might ruminate about it and it might cause them distress. It's been quite the opposite. It's normalized it, it's given them a voice, you talk about it, and more than that, it's empowered them, especially with the 2020 song, you know, you won't hold me back, I choose joy, I choose love, I choose hope. It's really made it a powerful anthem of we'll get through this, and has empowered them so much and given them confidence that this is something they are going to move forwards from.
Yes, brilliant.
But I knew that would happen because it was in Genevieve's hands.
Yes. Helen, what about you? What persuaded you to take on this tiny bit of extra work at that very quiet time?
Yeah. Like Genevieve said earlier, we were really focusing on children's well-being and mental health, being very aware that this, when you go through what is in fact a trauma, the whole nation has been through some really difficult times. You can't come back to school and just think standards, I'm going to plug gaps. We didn't talk about academic ability at that, well, not even now, actually, to be fair. You know, we've had a long time of just focusing on the children being feeling safe back in school, being secure, wanting to jump out of bed in the morning and come to school. It's got to be, you've got to have really memorable experiences. You've got to feel that connection with your teachers, reconnect with school, get back into the habit of being in school and just to look after each other and do something together. Relationships form the core of everything we do. If you can't share those times with your teachers and your friends, well, we're not doing very well as a school. So this to me seemed like a really good opportunity to bring people together, a real shared experience. We'd all been through the lockdown, we'd all got different experiences, but we've all come through it together and we brought it together in this really amazing project. So that's why we did it. It was something to connect us all together. And there was nobody, no teacher, no member of staff, no child who said, actually, I'm not sure that we really want to do this. It was, yeah, this is really exciting. It's great to be involved in it, and people really threw themselves into it.
Fantastic. There've been all sorts of restrictions on everybody, but particularly on schools. I guess most people know about bubbles and staggered lunch times and all of that, but there've also been restrictions on gathering together in a hall or singing together and all of those things. So maybe, Claire, you could tell us a little about how you dealt with that, and then how you might reflect on that for other schools as to whether this is still something you shouldn't do, or whether there are ways that you found that this is something that one can do and can do safely.
Well, obviously we had to follow guidelines, but fortunately just before September, guidelines did come out that yes, you can sing if you are in a certain space and your windows are open and your doors are open and you're in your bubble, and the children are in a bubble and they're very safe in those bubbles. So the minute that happened, of course we started singing, because singing is so important for mental well-being. It releases the endorphins, it brings people together. It's that space where you're concentrating on singing, you're not thinking of anything else. The children in our school love singing, the school loves singing. If you can't sing in a school, then it would be such a sad, sad place to be. We are lucky we've got a big hall, so we can even bring a year group together to sing together. We sing a lot. We're doing a nativity with the reception right now. Every school, I hope, I pray, is singing, because why come to school if you can't sing?
Yeah, I think, Will, that might be another song that needs to be written. Why come to school if you can't sing? Yeah. Thank you. Helen, how did you and your school deal with those restrictions? And
well, in a similar way, to be fair, I was a little bit worried over the summer holidays that we weren't going to be able to sing, and then guidance changed a bit, but you know, you could sing quietly, or I mean, hilariously, you could be back to back and sing, so that you, you know, it was a little bit odd, but you know, if you value something, if you know it's worth, you do actually make it happen. So that's why we just went ahead and did it within the guidelines, and of course it's provided a real welcome relief, actually. You know, it's the joy that you get with singing, it was needed. We needed that.
Fantastic. And then finally, just again from both of you, Claire first and then Helen, I know we haven't finished yet because the final event has yet to happen. But looking back on the project from when it started, from when you made that decision, yes, we're going to do it. How would you sum up the impact that this has had on the children, on the school, on the families? Who has this impacted on, and in what way?
It's impacted the children so enormously. They are so excited that their words, their feelings, their emotions have been put onto paper. They've seen the words on musical, lyrical sheets. They've seen Lizzie Holmes singing their words. They know that other schools are singing their words. It's not only increased their own self-esteem, that they actually are valued, their thoughts are valued, as well as the politicians and the NHS and the doctors and the scientists, their thoughts are valued. And they are being recorded wearing their headphones, listening to other people singing. And that's going to be on YouTube and it's going to be premiered. They are so excited. Every day children come up to me going, when are we going to see it? When are we going to see it? It's made them feel recognised and acknowledged. And the fact that they are also being invited to perform their feelings means an enormous lot to them. And the parents too are excited by it and glad that they like the children singing those songs at home, and they're starting to understand how they feel because they're hearing them sing those words all the time, because they are good songs.
Yes, as we will find out.
They are catchy. They're earworms, in fact.
Thank you. Helen, what about the impact from your perspective?
Yeah, I think this has been really positive for the children and the wider community. They've been able to acknowledge and accept the difficulties of the last few months, and together they've created something that they're proud of. The children are proud of it. The adults are proud of it. Really looking forward to it being launched, and we actually can't wait for this. That's just been amazing to see this all come together. Well, in time for Christmas, hopefully it'll be fabulous to launch that. And actually, I think it's been quite therapeutic for people to talk about their experiences, but then talk about it and move on from it, and then have they've been able to make sense of something like this. Learning and singing the songs has been really joyful, and to be fair, we've needed that more than ever, haven't we?
Fantastic. I'm going to draw this to a close in a second, but I guess I should, well, two things, one of which I'll probably get into trouble for, but one of them is, has anyone else got anything they want to add? Has anyone got anything that they haven't had the opportunity to say? Yeah, well,
it just comes out of what Helen and Claire have been talking about, but of course, because of COVID restrictions, rather than recording the children in big groups, what's actually happened is they've all recorded the songs individually, and then I've been mixing all of their voices together. Now, what's interesting about that, of course, is that that's quite scary to do that. There's within your average group of a class, obviously there'll be some children who are very happy to sing and nice and extrovert. There'll be a lot of children, I imagine, who really enjoy singing, but the idea of singing on your own is a different thing altogether. And I just think I've looked at lots of these videos and heard them individually, because I'm sort of putting them all together and mixing them all together, and they're all singing away. It's just fantastic to see that in a way that perhaps you wouldn't have an opportunity to do without this weird situation that we're in. And it thrills me, I've written so much choral music and I love people singing. It doesn't matter what they're singing to me, as long as people are singing. To see all these young people singing away and effectively doing a solo, all of them, it's just been really heartwarming, and they're gonna like what they hear, I think.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to tell you the bit that's going to get me into trouble. I can't have a piano in shot and nobody play it at all. That just is wrong. So I'm going to finish you. Yes. I want to say that from my perspective, this has been an absolutely fascinating insight into the process for this project, into two schools represented here who were very brave at a time when life was extremely busy and extremely uncertain, and I guess a little frightening and very overwhelming, to say yes to this. I think that as a funder, as Anguish is, we're really pleased and impressed with all of the work that everybody has done on this. We've worked with Interopera before, we will work with Interopera again in the future, and we know the quality of the work, but it's everybody that's been involved in this, so thank you for that. I'm looking forward more than I can say to watching the virtual premiere of the song cycle and the accompanying film. So I suppose I should thank Interopera, I should thank the schools, I should thank Will and Adisa, and I'm also going to thank my own organisation, Anguishes, for putting some of the money up, and particularly the trustees for backing this project. What we like to fund is stuff that changes people's lives or gives people the opportunity to have long-term positive change in their lives. I have no doubt whatsoever that every child that's been involved in this will remember it forever. This year is going to be hard to forget, and this project is probably going to be impossible to forget as part of that project, as part of that year. So that's fantastic. Here's the commercial. For more updates on this project and Interopera's work, please sign up to their social media pages, their YouTube channel. Just Google them, you will find them. Okay. That's me done. Thank you again, everybody. And Will, would you play us out, please?
I'll play you a bit. It seems appropriate that we should be playing 2020 Won't Hold Me Back.